attend the day 2 of our SMME awareness sessions. I think that in the first day, we had a lot of presentations, and there was definitely a lot of food for thought and a lot of information to be processed regarding what is aquaculture and how does one get started in aquaculture. We looked at the aspects of getting what exactly aquaculture entails and the species that are farmed in South Africa. And we looked at the technical aspects of aquaculture, the different types of technologies that are used where in the farms and in operations, as well as we provided a brief overview of what the sector is in South Africa and some details of how big those sectors are, the sizes. Mr. Ishmael went into the very important aspects of the authorizations, which are the permits and the rights one would require to get started. And a presentation was also done on food safety and biotoxin monitoring, which is an important aspect of the activities that are done in aquaculture and creates assurances that the product is safe for human consumption, both on the local market and internationally. We had a lot of question and answers, and I think that the recording has a lot of information with that. And we shared the presentation, we've shared important documents to ponder over. And I really need to emphasize that it is a lot of information for one to wrap their heads around. So it is important that if you feel that you need further clarity, which you most indeed will need, do not hesitate to contact the officials that are highlighted on this presentation, on the presentations that were shared. So moving on to day 2 of our program, we are looking at other aspects of aquaculture, the environmental interactions in place. So I would like Maqoba to get ready to start or to share his presentation. He can pull it up. We'll be looking at Operation Phakisa economy and investments, a very important area as well. And the big question that always comes up, and it's an important one, funding opportunities. Where does one get money? And then also a perspective into another aspect of aquaculture that is not usually dealt with and that most people are not aware of, which is the aquatic animal health issue. So I will not further introduce or welcome everybody. I think we know each other, or we have interacted virtually or in person. It's a cold day in Cape Town, so I hope everybody's warm. I don't know what the weather is like in Gqeberha, but let's get the ball rolling. Maqoba, over to you, Puti. Thank you very much for your participation. And some rules for today's engagement. Please ensure that your mic is off. Please ensure that your camera is off. During the presentations, there is a hand raise tool on your screen. Please use that hand raise tool. We'll also be taking a look at the comments on the side. So if you do have a question or a comment, do not hesitate. At the end of each presentation, we'll have a session. Ask questions. It's a free, it's an open, it's a relaxed session. So please feel free to ask questions in whatever language that you are comfortable with. I thank you for your time in the previous session and hope that this will be a fruitful session also. Maqoba, you may begin, Puti.
Thank you, Zimasa. Good morning, everyone, colleagues and stakeholders in all. I hope everyone can see my presentation.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. So, sorry. So my presentation, you will look at environmental interaction as a subunit and environmental legislation, environmental impact assessment, and environmental management plans or programs. Alien and invasive species, coastal water discharge permit, aquaculture development zones, the national strategic environmental assessment for marine and freshwater aquaculture. So here is the organogram of the Chief Directorate, Aquaculture and Economic Development. So right there we have our Chief Director, which is Mr. Belemani Semoli, and then down into the directorates, you would see we have aquaculture technical services, which is under Kumo. We have aquaculture research and development, where Andrea is acting in that position. And then we have sustainable aquaculture management, which is which I will delve into, where environmental interaction falls under. And then we have socio-economic, where they deal with harbors and other things. And then we have aquaculture operation Phakisa. And then we have Andrea there as a manager. So if we look under sustainable aquaculture management, we have, I'll only take one. We have aquatic animal health and environmental interaction. There under aquatic animal health, you will find aquatic animal health, which will be presented on, and then you have environmental interactions. There you get myself and Ms. Michelle Pretorius, and then you have food safety, which was presented before. So what does environmental interaction do? We implement integrated coastal and inland fisheries management by providing inputs into the process of developing guidelines, risk assessment, and designate our aquaculture development zone. So going deep on that one, so we project manage the EIAs done for the aquaculture development zones, and also projects relating to authorization applications. So other applications such as the risk assessments and other. So we project manage such projects. And we render inputs, technical inputs and advisory service to integrated environmental management relating to aquaculture operation, and develop developments that may have an impact on existing aquaculture. We review and comment on new and amendments on legislation to ensure that aquaculture development is considered and not negatively impacted. We implement support for facilitate integrated pollution and waste management for finfish and shellfish farms. So going into the environmental legislation. So as we know that aquaculture has positive and negative impacts on the environment, we know that some of the species would put nutrients and some would take up nutrients. So those are the positive and negative impacts that are identified for aquaculture. And in some cases, aquaculture also acts as an indicator for water quality. And it is good to have a good water quality or water that is not polluted, because polluted water would affect aquaculture and then in turn affect the market or the sales of the product. So aquaculture activity is regulated through a number of national and provincial legislation, and they are the Marine Living Resources Act, MRLA, the National Environmental Management Act, NEMA, the NEMA Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations 2014 as amended. There are some other amendments that are coming up, but those amendments are related to mining operation only. There were no amendments done relating to aquaculture on the new amendments. The National Environmental Management Integrated Coastal Management Act, ICMA, the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act, NEMBA, the NEMBA Alien and Invasive Species Regulations 2016. So there are some other regulations that are coming, are going to be coming through. They were under public participation process. So we might expect new regulations to come on alien and invasive species. And then we have the National Water Act. That one relates to water operations that are happening in the freshwater side. But it can also apply to the coastal activities. These are the few that I can name, but there are some others that are there as well, which a person would need to make sure that they do comply with those legislation and apply for relevant permits under those legislation. If I can also say the ICMA only applies to activities that are happening on the coast. So if you are doing aquaculture on the coastal zone, then that one would apply to you. And then the number would apply for both inland waters and coastal waters. So going into the history of the EIA regulations, the regulations have been there since 1989, but they were under the Environmental Conservation Act. So any activities that took place then, some of them might not have been covered in 1989, but from 1997, those would have to those activities then were covered under, then regulations were enforced, and then activities would have to go through the EIA process for undertaking activities. And then we had some amendments that were done until we had the 2014 EIA regulations. So the regulations first were under the Environmental Conservation Act, and then that act changed, and then the National Environmental Management Act was then in place, and it was used for managing the impacts on the environment. So the NEMA EIA regulations regulate the procedure and criteria as contemplated in Chapter 5 of the National Environmental Management Act, relating to the preparation, evaluation, submission, processing, and consideration of and decision on and application for environmental authorization for the commencement of activity, subject to environmental impact assessment, in order to avoid or mitigate detrimental impacts on the environment and to optimize a positive environmental impacts and for matters pertaining thereto. So the NEMA EIA regulations, they have 3 listing notices. So listing notice number 1 and 3, you have to conduct a basic assessment process for it. And then listing notice number 2, you have to conduct the full EIA process, which is the scoping and environmental impact reporting. So if we can look at listing notice number 1, activity 6. So there you have a threshold of 20 tons per annum for finfish, and then crust. And then we have crustaceans, reptiles, and amphibians, which is 30 tons. And then mollusks, we have 60 tons. Yes, we have 30 tons. And then we have 60 tons for aquatic plants. So this relates to the developments and the relative operation for land-based aquaculture activities. So when we go to sea-based or water-based activity, the threshold that is set there for all the species, it would be 50 tons per annum. So listing notice number 2 are activities that would have adverse or huge impact on the environment, and listing notice number 3, it relates to geographic area. So those ones, they depend on the areas where you are applying to undertake your activity. So some of the areas would be protected and others would not be protected. So it differs from province to province, and depending on the area where you are undertaking the activity. So the basic assessment, it takes 197 days, and there's an option to apply for an extra 50 days. And then in the scoping and environmental impact reporting, it takes about 300 days, but there is an additional there as well of 50 days that IP can apply for. An environmental management program must be submitted in the EIA process. So the EMPR are approved as part of the EIA process, and then they form part of the environmental authorization. So EMPRs are used for monitoring and managing the impact that may arise from the activities. As part of the permit conditions, operators are required to submit monitoring results to the subunit, which is environmental interaction, every month. So just to make sure that we check how a farm is managing their environmental impacts, and to report on the status of water quality of operations. But we having some difficulties in obtaining some of the results from the operators. That is why we have not really gone into the process of reporting on the water quality or the operation, how each operation are doing in relation to water quality. So then we have the NEMBA AAS regulations. NEMBA protects the species biodiversity by regulating the use of biodiversity, threatened species, protected species, alien and invasive species. This means that some species are protected from use or take, and others are not allowed to enter the country. The use of alien species is regulated through the NEMBA AIS regulations. Invasive species are grouped into categories 1A, 1B, 2, and 3. So depending on where that species would be, some of the species would be prohibited from use. Like most species in category 3 would be prohibited for use, and others would be exempted. And then in category 2, you might find some species that would require some permits. You having to apply for some permits when you use some of those species. also in the two other categories. A risk assessment must be done before the species is brought into the country, and then it goes with the AIS application, and then once that AIS application has been approved, then you can then use that species. So as part of the Aquaculture C, which is the National Strategic Environmental Assessment for freshwater and marine species, there were some generic risk assessment that were updated for alien species that are used for aquaculture. And then we go to Ecma. So in Ecma, section 64 of Ecma requires that no person may discharge water from a land-based source into the coastal waters without authorization. So a person is obligated to apply for a coastal waters discharge permit so that they can be able to discharge water into the coastal waters. Coastal waters discharge permit regulation regulates the discharge into the coastal waters and covers the high impact or high risk discharge. Coastal waters discharge is onerous and costly process for operators. That is why there was a decision to make a general discharge authorization. So the general discharge authorization is for low impact or low risk discharges that discharge less than 10 megaliter per day. So this would cover aquaculture operations that don't discharge, that do not have that much impact, which also discharges those liters per day. So it mostly covers the aquaculture, the abalone aquaculture operations. So going to the ADZs, so we have the Amatekulu ADZ, which is in KZN. That ADZ is approximately 37 hectares, and it covers both freshwater and marine species. So for freshwaters, we have 12.6 hectares, and for freshwater. Then for marine, we'll have 24.6 hectares. So the target species for that ADZ is ornamental prawns, marine and freshwater finfish, sea urchins, and crocodiles. Currently, there are only 2 hectares is used by 2 ornamental farms. Production potential for the ADZ is 300 tons for fish per annum, and the EIA was conducted in 2019, and then we got a refusal, but we are on appeals process. We are expecting a decision from the Minister of Justice on that appeal. And then we have Kolocha ADZ, which is in Eastern Cape. That ADZ is 26.4 hectares. It's a land-based ADZ. We target marine finfish, abalone, and seaweed. Currently, no activity or no farming is taking place. Funding is required to support infrastructure development. And then when we going to the, and then when we going to the possible of development, we are looking at developing 2 300-ton abalone and seaweed farms, and a combined with a finfish farm. Environmental authorization was granted in September 2011, and we got an extension till September 2023. And then the Algoa Bay ADZ. The ADZ is 1,146 hectares. It's a sea-based ADZ. The target is the marine finfish, oyster, and mussel. Current one farm is operating in Port Elizabeth Harbour, which is Algoa 6. However, an EIA is required for expansion production. So the possible production for the site. So we have three sites there. The Algoa 1 site, which is 218 hectares. So we looking to produce mussels there, and also oysters. And then we have Algoa 6, which has 479 hectares. There we looking to produce oysters. And then we have Algoa 7, which is 355 hectares. There we looking to produce finfish. So 3 finfish. We're looking at 3 finfish production at 1,000 tons in the first year of the pilot study, and up to 9,000 tons by year 3. Environmental authorization was granted in February 2020, and then we are currently waiting for decision on the appeals. And then we have Saldanha, which is in the Western Cape. The ADZ is 884 hectares. It's a sea-based ADZ. There we have Pacific oysters, mussels, abalone, scallops, white stump nose, cabourgeon, yellowtail, salmon, trout, and seaweed. So currently, there's only mussel, oyster, and trout that are being produced there at the moment. The environmental authorization was granted in 2018, and then the appeals were received, and then the environmental authorization was upheld. Currently, the current status, there are 32 aquaculture farms producing less than 10 tons for mussels and oysters, and we have one operation which is producing trout, which is less than 50 tons. ADZ, the ADZ is managed through the ADZ Management Committee, AMC, which is a government forum. And then we have a public forum, which is the consultative forum, the CF. And then the others that are on the way are the Mossel Bay ADZ, which is in the Western Cape. It's a sea-based ADZ for producing bivalves and finfish. We are still going to undertake the EIA for that ADZ. And then another one is the Richards Bay ADZ. There's a meeting. I made a mistake there. It shouldn't be IDZ, it should be ADZ. And it's in KZN. There as well is a sea-based ADZ, which would look to produce finfish. The EIA there is still going to be done. So looking at the National Strategic Environmental Management Assessment for marine and freshwater aquaculture. So the purpose of the sea was to promote and support the responsible and sustainable growth of the developing aquaculture industry in South Africa, contribute towards job creation, food security, and economic investment opportunity. To take a strategic scientific analysis of opportunities and constraints influencing aquaculture development in South Africa. So the sea aims to achieve its purpose in two ways. A, to identify strategic marine and freshwater aquaculture development zones or suitable focus areas. Use a multi-layer special analysis of the receiving environment. Second, to provide the competent authority with a streamlined and integrated management and regulatory framework to reduce compliance complexities and improve decision-making process pertaining to these identified and assessed ADZ. You can find the strategic environmental assessment in that website. It was done by CSIR, and they concluded their work in 2019. So there are some other phases of the process that needs to be finalized so that the sea can be approved. So the target for freshwater were tilapia, brown trout, African sharp-tooth catfish, rainbow trout, marine, Nile tilapia. And the systems were raceway, cage, tanks, and ponds. So for marine, the target species were mussels, abalone, dusky carp, salmons, oysters, and then the systems there were cage culture along lines, rafts, the RES system, the flow-through system, and the ponds. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maqoba, for that presentation. Can we then move on to questions and answers from the floor? You may use the raised toolbar on the raise hand toolbar to ask any questions and answers. Questions, I'm sorry. Any questions? Can the next presenter please prepare their presentation? Okay, there is one question from Dumi Mvenyane. Dumi, you can go for it.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Zamasa. Thank you, Maqoba, for that very informative presentation. We have learned something, and also to understand the importance of environmental impact assessment. Mine is just one. I would not want to miss this question on your presentation, the issue around the Kologa ADZ. I mean, it has been standing there, and I believe feasibility studies have been conducted, but it's very much disappointing that the project is not operational because there's no funding involved or available. Is there no way that government, together with business, find an alternative solution or lobby for investors to come and make sure that that project does go ahead? What I'm trying to say is that is that going to remain redundant just because there is no funding available to make sure that the project go ahead, and what can be done?
Thanks, Dumi.
Thanks,
colleagues. Response, colleagues.
Hi, colleagues. I can give it a stab, Zimasa. So, just in response to the Kologa ADZ, so we've been working tirelessly with on the ADZ, looking for investors, also looking at how we can get funding for that. We've taken it to numerous sort of investment platforms and everything. I know one process that we are trying now is with there's a PPP process. I think that's public-private partnership, which falls under National Treasury. And we have colleagues that are now trying to put that project onto finding a way how we can put it onto sort of that platform so that the project can go ahead. I'll have to find out what's the status on that, but yeah, we are definitely still pushing for Kgoroga to be to work. Yeah, thanks.
Any other additions, Michelle, you'd like to add?
Thanks, Amasa. Yes, I'd just like to add that currently there is discussions with I think it's Department of Public Works regarding lease agreements and power of attorneys for the site that ATS is currently running with. So the delays are related to setting up possible lease agreements that would be approved through our department regarding the site. So once that is finalized, then I know that ATS then does have a plan to move forward with appointing service providers for the construction side, and they are dealing with the funding side of things. So it is running in the background. It's just unfortunate that there have been a number of delays for a number of years due to funding issues, as mentioned by the colleague.
Thank you, Michelle. And then there's a question from Marius Kalitz. Marius, take the floor, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Quick question with regards to the aquaculture environment. Is there a way that, number one, universities or other tertiary institutions can be involved with government or the public, seeing that this might be a great future prospect in job creation so that you can create awareness? That's the first question. The second one is then on the backside where we are dealing with current farmers, whether it's finfish or abalone or any of those. How do government propose assisting those people or those businesses with set of areas or getting the product into into shops and into the public awareness, seeing that South Africa isn't historically a fish consuming or a water species consuming nation? Thank you.
Thanks, Marius. On the issue of, I'll take the first question, and I think the person who's best suited to answer the second question would be my colleague Lisa. On the issue of awareness and engaging with institutions, we do engage with a lot of institutions through our working groups. We've got several working groups which are hosted by Smme, and we do involve universities and create opportunities for the recruitment of graduates. And also another aspect that we have is the linkages that we create through the research that we do. We are linked with, there's research that is undertaken in collaboration with our institutions. And some of the institutions, if you look at NMU, also do a lot of the monitoring for the projects that we have, the aquaculture projects that we have. There are lots of opportunities that we try to create, be it for research, be it for employment, or be it for linkages in terms of projects. And right now we actually have an ad out for internships and internships in various sectors within the department. So I think that you could also note that for your graduates. It actually expires tomorrow, but it has been advertised extensively in newspapers and on the Sanko platform. Thanks. Over to you, Lisa, to deal with the other issue.
Thank you. So concerning helping prospective farmers with market, on a high level, we've done a marketing strategy for fish products and the aquaculture sector in 2019. I will share that strategy with you. We've also sort of formed a marketing working group, because we find that we have to work with industry and the industry associations. So there's various industry associations per species. So you get the bivalves, which covers your shellfish. You've got the tilapia, the TASA organization, catfish as well. So you've got various organizations, and there's also a bigger body called Aquaculture SA. So we work closely with industry and the associations to see how we can improve market. So I think perhaps give us, send us an email on the prospective farmer and what market they're looking into. I think from ATS's side, we can see how we can assist firstly on there, and then perhaps if they're interested in joining that association, that also creates sort of a wider network. Because as you're saying, South Africans aren't big fish eaters, so we have to join forces with other farmers so that we can sort of meet retailers' expectations of, because they require high tonnages of product in order to sell to consumers. So it's always better to work within the association and with other groupings of farmers. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Lisa, for that. Ndumi, is that another question or a legacy hand?
Okay. Sorry, it's an old hand. Sorry.
It's an old hand. Thank you. I see that there are no more questions. So can we please move on to the next presentation? Our next presenter is Lisa Mazaleni, and she'll be presenting on Operation Phakisa Oceans Economy and Investments. Lisa, you may take the floor.
Colleagues, can you just confirm if it's in presentation mode? Because I have it not in presentation mode.
Lisa, it's not on presentation mode yet.
Okay.
It's not on presentation mode, yeah.
Just a second for me. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you so much again. Apologies for not being able to join the first day's workshop. I had another Aquaculture Development Fund meeting to attend, but I'm happy to be here today. So my presentation, just go through the contents. I'm going to be giving you an overview on the Operation Phakisa Oceans Economy Program. Then I'm going to zone in on our aquaculture focus area or work stream, and then also touch on investment approach and how one should try and find investment for your aquaculture business.
Lisa, I think you're not in presentation mode still.
Is it? It's showing. Yes. It's showing on my PC. I've just got presentation. Let me just see. Can you see I'm going to slideshow?
To me, the slideshow is highlighted orange, not presentation. If you could give it another attempt of clicking slideshow mode.
Yes, I'm on this.
Hello?
Still 30 minutes of my leave time to remind the municipal manager of the...
Okay, somebody has their mic on.
And the response is the Officer General.
Lisa, if you could just wait a second, I just want to see whose mic is on.
Okay, no problem.
And try and silence them. Yeah, they are quiet now. You can proceed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's still not in presentation mode, but on my screen, I've only got the slideshow view. So I don't know maybe it's a technical glitch. Apologies for that.
Let me try on your side because I do have your presentation.
Yeah, okay, great. Please, you can do so. I'll stop sharing on my side.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm. Mm. Can you see that in presentation mode?
It's still loading, just a second. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll drive for you then.
Don't forget stuff. You can go to the next contents. I've done with contents, and then the first slide. Thank you. Next slide.
Next.
Yeah, next. Okay. Sorry, Zimasa, just one back again. Get going too fast. One more back.
Okay.
No. It should say, it should show the different work streams.
This one?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
It's showing contents again. Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you, colleagues. So Operation Phakisa Oceans Economy began in 2014. It was launched by former President Zuma, and it focused on sort of different key sectors which they identified as, oh, Zimas, I think that the screen went away. Sorry, Zimas, the presentation disappeared. Okay, yes. So they identified key sectors that will drive and increase the GDP of the country, also jobs. Because we have 3,000 kilometers of ocean coast in South Africa, they focused on these areas, and aquaculture was one of them. So the focus areas were marine transport and manufacturing, offshore oil and gas, aquaculture, marine protection services and ocean governance, small harbors development, coastal and marine tourism, and then we have two enablers for each of these focus areas, which is skills development and capacity building, research, technology, and innovation. So it's estimated that the oceans economy could contribute up to 177 billion to the GDP of South Africa by 2033, and approximately create 1 million jobs. Thanks. You can go to the next slide. So as you know, there are various departments that drive each of these different focus areas. So under previously we were agriculture, forestry and fisheries. Now we are environment, forestry and fisheries, and we are the drivers of the aquaculture focus area. So mining, there's DTIC, there's all various government departments are responsible for their focus area. But on a monthly basis, we report to and work with Department of Monitoring, so it's DPME, Performance Management and Monitoring. And also the key custodian of the oceans economy was the then Environmental Affairs. So those two departments drive and are the strategic force in driving the oceans economy program of South Africa. So this is what the short, medium, and long-term vision was. So we've just ended, well, not just ended, in 2019. It was the 5-year anniversary of Operation Phakisa, because in 2014, we had what we call the Operation Phakisa Oceans Economy Lab, and then we had an aquaculture lab, basically where various stakeholders sat and did planning according to the strategy of the oceans economy given to us. So overall, all those different focus areas, that's the short, medium, and long-term goals. Due to obviously other economic reasons, which I'll also touch on, we could not reach yet the 77 1,000 jobs and GDP contribution. So the key performance areas are jobs, economic growth, and transformation. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So thus far, the ocean's economy impact with operational work after the October 2014 launch, the overall progress for directly funded ocean's economy project impacts. So there's a combined government and private sector investment of 40 billion, and there's been the creation of 7,385 jobs in the various sectors overall. So that's the status currently. Next slide. So this is just showing you again the footprint of our 3,000 kilometers of coast that we have, an ocean space that we govern in East Africa. Next slide. Okay. So we've also sort of highlighted some of the critical challenges, doing an analysis of how. Sorry, I think someone's mic is on, Morena. Oh. Of what the impact of the ocean's economy implementation has been thus far. So some of the challenges is the depressed global and local economic climate. Global trade growth and commodity prices under downward pressure, low oil prices impacting negatively on the oil and gas sector, slowdown in investments, reduction in demand, reduced investor appetite, funding for the different initiatives has been a struggle, and also Phakisa obviously means hurry up. So we wanted to fast track these sectors and grow our GDP as a country. But what we found is that we were slipping back into business as usual processes. So proposed mitigating measures that they've looked at as the ocean's economy is to do direct engagement with private sectors and other stakeholders. Also focus on current demand and expand such initiatives, review of current plans in light of the new economic climate, and also let's do a recommitment of the methodology, which was adopted from Malaysia back in 2014, and also look at capacity for the implementing departments. Okay, next slide. So now I'm going to just talk through the aquaculture work stream. So as I said, we had a lab in 2014 where we had, so it was government, it was industry, it was academia, civil society, who am I missing? Current and prospective farmers, everyone who had an interest or was currently in the aquaculture sector sat in a room for 6 weeks, and they basically looked at what is happening, what is the status of aquaculture in South Africa. What we do know that there is incredible potential, but it was remaining at a small scale, leading to many challenges for producers. So some of the areas of concern in aquaculture was that we didn't have an efficient regulation and government system, difficulty in accessing finance, which comes up quite a lot. There was underrepresentation in the sector, limited market footprint. It was small scale. There's a small pool of skills. Apologies. There's also fragmented research and development. Rural infrastructure is underdeveloped, and also there was a challenge in sourcing quality inputs that includes feed. Yeah, so this was the status. They looked at all of these things, and then they said, okay, now we're going to use the Phakisa methodology to fast track it. What are going to be our goals within the next 5 years, and then also leading to 2033. Give me the next slide. Okay, so this was the Phakisa lab aspirations, that we wanted to increase our production to 20,000 tons. We wanted to contribute up to 3 billion to the in terms of revenue. We wanted to be more inclusive and have inclusive growth that includes our previously disadvantaged individuals. We want to employ around 15,000 people in direct and full-time jobs, And we also want to have quality jobs and improving livelihoods in rural communities. So these were our aspirations and our goals, and we continuously have to report to that. But then obviously, how do we reach those goals? And this is the next slide will show what is our basically our strategy, how we're going to achieve these goals. I think there's just one back, Smasa. Oh, it might be. Just see. Oh, sorry, no, you're right. So in 2019, towards the end of 2019, because that was the sort of the 5-year milestone of the aquaculture Phakisa, we then had to look at where do we go from here. So this is what we've achieved up to 5 years. What is our projections for the next 10 years? And what is the potential challenges that we're going to be facing? So we took each species, as you can see on the left side. I'll go through some of it. Abalone, the current production was 1,600 tons. The 5-year projection was land-based 4,000 tons and ranching 200 tons. In 10 years, we could be there at 7,000 and ranching 1,000. Potential challenges is increased security and market, which took a big knock. And then we also done estimated jobs for 5 years and 10 years. Same with mussels, as you can see, 2,200. Current production, 5-year and 10 years. What are the potential challenges? Market access. So during your own time, we obviously share this presentation. You're welcome to go through that. So we had that workshop, and that was also part of the master plan process, which came in with the new government administration, where we needed to now focus on our new goals and how is Phakisa potentially going to be incorporated into the master plan process that the president has implemented. You can go to the next slide. So this was our how to get to our goal that I said in terms of jobs, production, GDP, and being inclusive. So first of all, we have 9 initiatives, and the first one is selection and implementation of catalyst projects, or we can call them aquaculture projects. So we have asked industry and farmers who's interested in joining Phakisa. When you're joining Phakisa, you're committing to contributing to our goals, and we commit to helping you in unblocking, maybe it's regulatory blockages, helping you fast track different processes if it's to do with land, because now we are Phakisa. We are working closer as departments. We've got public works and infrastructure in the room. We've got DTIC in terms of market. How can we work better together as all government departments in order to improve our sector? So we had projects that joined, and to date we have 45 registered Phakisa projects, and their responsibility is to draw up plans for the next 5 years and saying this is where the project is, this is where they're going to be, this is how many jobs they are looking to grow, this is their production, and we call those 3-foot plans. So once you join Phakisa, you do a 3-foot plan, and then you report back to us, and we also monitor it and support you where support is needed, and also help unblock blockages that you have. So the main thing is the projects that we have, and I'll show you a map after this of where they're all placed, and we continuously take new projects on to join aquaculture projects to join in Phakisa. You can be a greenfield, a new project. You can be a current project that's also looking to expand. Then we have from 2 to 9, we have our enablers. So in order for these projects to thrive, this needs to be in place, and it also helps our sector to grow. So number 2 is our legislative reform. Here we're looking at basically how can we consolidate all these different pieces of legislature that governs aquaculture. We have our aquaculture development bill, which has been approved by Cabinet on the 9th of May 2018 and introduced to Parliament. But now we're under process because we have new administration looking at how we are going to revive that and take it back to parliamentary processes. We also, as Makoba mentioned, we've got the strategic environmental assessment that was done to say where in the country is the best to do freshwater farming, where is the best to do marine farming. So that was also under that legislative reform initiative. Number 3, we said we need an interdepartmental authorizations committee, because as again, we have different authorizations that apply to aquaculture. So we're looking at having different departments and streamlining processes. I think Intia has also just covered that in the first day, sort of what is the processes for authorizations. So that has also been a priority to streamline those processes for environmental authorizations. Number 4, globally recognized monitoring and certification system. Here we're looking at how are we going to ensure that our aquaculture food is safe for exports and that it's certified according to the different countries where we want to export to their standards. This be the EU, this be Asia. How do we do this? So this is managed within that initiative. Initiative 5 is our Aquaculture Development Fund. As we know, Masupeng is going to cover that. We have created a working group within this initiative, basically to bring all your development funding institutions, your NEFs, your IDCs, your CEDAs, all of them into one room and say, these are our aquaculture projects. How can you fund them or support them? In order to do their processes. So we currently have a working group, as it's been difficult to formulate a fund where you have all funds pulling into one fund. That wasn't possible over the last 5 years. So the working group has done that. We also have an investment conference that we try and do annually to also sort of highlight aquaculture investment opportunities. Number 6 looks at capacity building and skills development. As I showed you in the previous slide, there was a lack of skills and capacity within the sector. So under this, there's a skills working group, and Zimas also mentioned Smme. They work closely with Smme, who also is a big partner in this working group. And they've done a skills and needs analysis of the sector, basically saying this is where we're lacking, this is where we need to pull. We also look at sort of agreements. We've got an agreement with Sterling University where our vets are sent for training courses. We've got our aquaculture, our China and South Africa Aquaculture Technology Development Center, or CHARIP as was known, where we train farmers and government officials. And then we've also we've done a skills booklet. We're also looking at sort of certifying aquaculture qualifications. So this working group is quite critical. Number 7, we said we need to prioritize industry-wide marketing efforts, but it needs to be an industry sort of driven thing. That has also been more driven by government. Like I said, we did the marketing strategy for aquaculture products and the sector. We've done videos which we'll also share on different species for awareness and also to encourage people to show them how aquaculture products are made. So we've got that available. We also do. Let's see. We've also got the African chapter of the World Aquaculture Society under this. Basically, that's also a sort of good association to be part of. Then number 8 is our government preferential procurement. So as we scale up and we are increasing our production in South Africa, how can we get our aquaculture products into prisons, into hospitals, into schools? So we're looking at that. Currently, we're going to be doing a trial with correctional services with 2 facilities, one on tilapia and one on catfish. Catfish will be in the Eastern Cape in Kirkwood. Potentially that's going to be happening in the next week or so, where we are going to see how the inmates take to these products, and if possible, then we can obviously start providing product to that, which is quite great. Then number 9, Matuba mentioned a lot about this. This is the agriculture development zone, and this also influences investment, because if you have a zone that has an EIA, that has the infrastructure, it's easy for a new farmer or new investor to come in to that ADZ and do farming, because all the authorizations and all of that is managed. Next slide. So as I said, the 45 projects that we currently have on Phakisa, these were the original 24 aquaculture projects. You can see they're all over the country. Then 7 of them were removed and placed onto business opportunities, which means they cannot not meet the criteria, but they currently have other issues that need to be sorted out until they can join Phakisa again. So these were the original 24, and you can go to the next slide. Yeah, that's one. And then these are the 28 new aquaculture projects that have joined since 2014. As you can see, quite a majority of them, just one back, Simasa. A majority of them are in the Saldanha Bay ADZ, and we've got just one back, Simasa. What's happening here?
Is it correct?
Yeah, that's correct. In the Eastern Cape, we've got Ecmbc in PE. We've got Kucha with a project. We've got Kraft Renet, the Karoo Catch project. So we definitely can have more projects in the Eastern Cape. You can go to the next slide. So with those 9 initiatives, we've had to phase them in different phases and prioritize and look at where's our short-term targets, where is our longer-term targets. But as I can say, we are in phase 3, which is actually 5 years and beyond now. However, each of those initiatives are at various levels and statuses within Phakisa. You can go to the next slide. So this is the aquaculture development zone map. I also wanted to highlight this and show where the different ADZs are. Maqoba mentioned, I think it was 6 of them. I've included Kucha, and I think it was Van der Kloof that's in the Northern Cape, which is a dam-based one that they're looking to do trout in. So, like I said, the ADZs are quite key and critical, and I think Saldanha Bay ADZ is sort of our test baby, where we are, it's sort of the pilot of one of the first ADZs, and hopefully we can replicate this model in our other provinces. Algoa Bay is another one, that is also mentioned. You can go to the next one. So this is just an overview of the Saldanha Bay ADZ. I just want to take you through some of the benefits. You can go to the next slide. So potential benefits of an ADZ, like I said, improving access to new projects, it assists in growth and transformation of the sector. It's a more enabling environment for new and expansion projects. Permanent jobs, sort of the potential jobs that can be done. Fatima, I don't know what's going on. It just disappeared now.
Sorry, it's a glitch. Just sort it out.
No problem.
No. Can you see it now?
Yeah, but it's not in presentation mode. It disappeared again. Morena, I see your comment on the government preferential procurement. Yes, in terms of the tilapia one, there is a bit of a delay because there was one ingredient, I think they were going to do fish cakes as pasta, and then there was one ingredient that they didn't have enough product of. So we are waiting for them to tell us what is the new date, and they want to do that at the Krugersdorp facility in Gauteng. So we're hoping to do that one. It went away again, Zimasa. Do you want me to share? I can just increase my slide.
Can you see it now?
It's not in presentation mode. Okay, yes, right?
Okay.
I just need you to go. Let me just see where I was. I was at the ADZs. Slide 17, please, Zimasa. Just on the Saldanha Bay ADZ. Yeah, we are. Thank you. So the potential of the Saldanha Bay ADZ is up to 2,500 permanent jobs, sort of upskilling people as well, increase investment, and then the potential revenue turnover at full production would be 800,000 per annum rand, which doesn't include downstream and upstream value. Due to water scarcity, the production of marine aquaculture has a very low water footprint compared to other agriculture products, which is particularly considering water constraints in the Western Cape. And there's a big scope for import substitution, as majority of seafood in South Africa is imported and not produced locally. So that helps the socioeconomic impact in terms of our country. Can go to the next one. So as I said, with the aquaculture work stream, some of the key challenges that we found over the last 5 or 6 years is that the vision was for Operation Phakisa to be a multi-sector collaboration. Subsequent to the lab, industry support on some initiatives has been very minimal, and a lot of the initiatives are being purely driven by government. This is skills, legislative reform, and marketing. As I mentioned, there's a depressed economic environment, which results in us not meeting our targets that we initially planned in the lab. We also didn't plan for the depressed economic environment in the lab, which we should have. In terms of continuity in some government departments, this has also impacted progress when staff or senior management has changed. Also, sometimes we come across interested and affected parties that oppose some of our projects. I can speak to Saldanha Bay, EIA, I think Algoa was another one. Also in the environmental and climate-related risks, such as harmful algal blooms and drought, had an impact on our growth. Policy uncertainty also impacts negatively with investors. There's a lack of export opportunities, which industry now. Zimasa, I don't know if you just want to switch your mic off. And obviously the bigger one, which we'll talk to in the next presentation, is access to funding. So in terms of investment approach, my time's coming up. So in terms of investment approach for projects, the most important step, which I've seen in and out, is to get an investment-ready business. This is critical, because when you approach any funders or any investors, they want to know that you know your numbers, you've done your projections, you looked at the climate, and you can get help through this through your local CEDA, your small enterprise development agencies. They have offices throughout the country. We've actually tested this with 2 projects in Saldanha. We liaised with, I think it was in Vredenburg, where they assisted 2 projects to make their business plan investment ready. They basically even appoint CEDA appoints a service provider if it's in a sector that they don't have too much knowledge of. to work with the project owner on improving their business plan. So that is very, very critical. Step number 2, existing or greenfield aquaculture projects with a good business plan are able to register on Phakisa. I'll also tell you about the process and how that can be done, because when you are a registered project and you need investment, we prioritize those and we present them to local international forums. They're added to those investment opportunity dashboards with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And there's a unit called the Invest SA unit, and there's investment promotion agencies in the various provinces, and sort of they become prioritized and are given to investors who come into the country. Just one back to myself.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to switch off my mic without cutting.
I see, that's fine. Just the next one. We went back again. We need to go to step 3 of investment approach. Okay, it's presentation that's gone off.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's showing the agenda now, not the presentation. We are on slide 20, just 2 more slides and we're done. Next one. Yeah, you can stop here. Yes, and then sort of the next step is that registered projects that need investment and funding are presented at the Aquaculture Development Fund Working Group. And in that working group, like I said, we have all the development funding institutions sitting there, your IBCs, your NEFs, your CEDAs, your land banks. So we've got sort of a relationship with all of those development funding institutions, and the projects are presented and they can advise and see where they want to help or assist and fund. We also have the different investment agencies that sit there, your ECDC, your Trade and Investment KZN, Westgrow in the Western Cape. As you know, they also got a very solid list of investors that they always update and have. Yeah, and then the next step is to get to know your provincial investment promotion agencies. There is an Invest SA one-stop shop office in the Eastern Cape, and it's under the ECDC sort of mandate, and they're responsible for streamlining the investment value chain for medium to large companies looking to invest in South Africa. So they offer investment facilitation. They take potential investors to site visits, showcase investment opportunities available in the Eastern Cape. So they are a good partner to approach and have, once you've got your investment ready business plan, of course. I also want to mention that the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, they also do outward and inward investment missions where they take aquaculture projects and they maybe take you to Asia if they've got a what do you call it, an export or what's this word? They have marketing conferences where you are able to meet potential exporters at these platforms, and then they also bring in investors. Maybe you've identified an investor, a foreign investor that's interested in partnering in your project, and they can also assist with bringing them in to do site visits and so forth. Okay. Last slide. Okay, the last one, Then the last one is registration on our aquaculture operation Phakisa sort of platform. So what I'll just take you through is that, so if you want to be part of Operation Phakisa, what are you committing to? You're committing to contributing towards our aspirations that I told you, which is job creation, transformation, GDP growth. We are responsible for helping you unbottle bottlenecks that you have with your projects. You will be exposed to potential investors if funding is required. Project will be profiled, progress is monitored, and reporting is done publicly to ensure transparency and accountability. We have a template that we'll share obviously after this, where you put in your information, and then it's weighted on different criteria. As you can see on the left, the B requirement on application is level 4, 25% for existing projects and 50% ownership for new projects. And then these are the 5 criteria that your project is weighted against. We also do a site visit to the project with our colleagues from Aquaculture Technical Services, and then you are given feedback if you go to phase 2 and so forth. Thank you, colleagues. Any questions? Those are my contact details here.
Thank you, everybody, and let me apologize for the sound issues and the issues with the slideshow. I don't know what happened each time I tried to switch off the volume. My sound, the slideshow will just totally close. Thanks, and I appreciate your patience. Are there any questions from the floor for Lisa regarding Operation Phakisa and investments? Can I have a show of hands? Okay. I guess there are no questions for Lisa. There's been a request for a body break. So can we then have a very short body break starting now, and then we'll come back at 11:50. So the body break is for 13 minutes. Thank you. So we'll come back at 11:50. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Welcome back to the second, to the next presentation from Masuping. Masuping, if you could be aware of the time, we have a bit of a crunch that we're going to have. Moving on to your presentation, you can begin, Sisi. The floor is yours, Masuping. We can't hear you.
Okay, apologies for that. I was struggling to open my mic. Good morning, still the morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Masuping Mofokeng, within the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries. I'll be taking you through the funding opportunities for SMMEs. So it will be information sharing on funding in aquaculture. Just to give you a background or status of aquaculture in terms of access to finance, in recent years, the sector has become important due to global demand for fishery products, due to the fact that the wild-caught fisheries are being depleted. So more and more people are relying on aquaculture products to substitute the wild-caught. So even in South Africa, it's the same case. It's becoming important, and it's becoming one of the important sector for government. Not only because it will contribute to food security, but because also it provides a good opportunity as a job creator, and also to contribute to poverty alleviation and promote economic development, as well as trade opportunities in the country, as we might be aware that we are importing more fishery products than we are exporting. So aquaculture can be useful to close this gap. So in terms of aquaculture operations, they are very capital intensive when you compare them to other agriculture commodities. Reason being that they are technology driven. Remember that we are farming a fish not from its natural habitat, but we are farming it in culture systems which are man-made. So it is technologically driven, and therefore it needs more capital in order to start a fish farm. So in terms of accessing finance in the aquaculture sector, there's been general lack of access to finance, and this is attributed to the fact that the sector is still very small, so it is less understood by the investors. And then there's lack of support for new entrants and also small businesses. As we may know, that big funders like commercial banks, they will want something which is commercially viable, and they're able to get their money back in terms of repayment. And then also we find that there are grants which are all over the government departments which are being uncoordinated. So we find funding in different categories. So SMMEs can be able to access finance in terms of equity funding, where they can sell their the stake in their business to investors, and then investors put in some capital. And the other source of funding is government grant. And the government grant, this is where the government provides capital, but they don't expect any repayments after giving you the grants. But obviously you'll have to comply with all the stipulated guidelines. And then we also have the government incentives. This one, it's similar to the grant in essence that they don't expect any repayment from you, but they will need you to have your own capital. It can be a capital from your own financial resources, or from the loan, and then you match that with their incentive. In other words, you need to invest so that they are able to reimburse you. We also have the loan funding or a debt funding. This is usually being provided by commercial banks and the DFIs. So here they will expect a repayment at a provided interest rate. So all these funding categories, they can be provided from these funding entities, the development financial institutions, which are the DFIs, from the government departments, which usually provide grants, from private funders, they usually provide equity or loan funding. From provincial DFIs, they usually provide loan funding or sometimes the grants, and commercial banks which provide loan funding. And then in terms of development funds institutions, these are some of the DFIs that accommodate aquaculture. We have the Industrial Development Corporation, the Land Bank, National Empowerment Fund, which is the NEF, the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, SEFA, and then we have also Technology Innovation Agency. So SMMEs can be assistance from SEFA, from TIA as well, as mostly the IDC and your NEF, they usually look at commercial projects, which in other words, they provide commercial funding. So SMMEs can approach the small enterprise and TIA, as they also provide some financing for SMMEs. So when we look at the SEFA, the type of funding that they provide is loan funding, and they provide this assistance to small, micro, and medium-sized enterprises and also cooperatives. The SEFA, they have qualifying projects on which they looked at. This will be the manufacturing, and then this will include agro processing, and then in terms of aquaculture, this will be your post-harvest entities where you are processing, value adding, and so on. And then agriculture, this will be the land reform beneficiaries and contract farming activities. So these are some of the funding products that SEFA provides. They have direct lending, which is from the minimum of 15,000 to 15 million, and then they have wholesale lending, which include credit guarantees, equity, and so on, and it provides funding from 500 to 5 million. And then they also have other support services. This will be non-financial support, like post-loan monitoring, business and technical support, and so on. SEFA has also recently launched a new program, which is a SEFA blended finance. So basically here, what they do is that they blend a loan funding, which is from the SEFA, as we have indicated previously that they provide a loan funding. And then they also take the grant funding from the Department of Small Business Development, which is priced at 0% interest. So they blend these two sources of funding and provide financial assistance to SMMEs. So qualifying projects here will be the SMMEs, which are creating a minimum of 10 jobs and are requiring a funding for over a period of 3 years. And then the maximum funding will be 2.5 million. So moving on to Technology Innovation Agency, which is TIA. So this one is the agency of the Department of Science and Technology, DSI. So what their objective is to to intervene to bridge the innovation between research and development and commercialization. So they provide financial and non-financial support, and their funding type is a grant funding. So these are some of the qualifying projects. We have science institutions, the startup companies, the SMMEs, and also large companies which are participating in the innovation support programs. So the minimum funding here is 50,000 and the maximum is 50 million. So these are some of the funding programs within the tier. They have the seed fund program. So this program, it basically helps the projects in terms of research and demonstration. That's why it is called the seed funding. And then after that, it's followed by the technology development fund, which is after you've done your research, you now have a technology. You can advance your technology from that proof of concept from the seed fund. And then from there, when your technology has been proven, they are assisting you with the commercialization support fund. This is where your market testing and validation of your product is done. So here, the fundable activities can be production of market samples, support to get your certification, regulatory approval, and so on. Okay, moving on to the government funding programs. We have funding programs within the government departments, and the first one is the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. So within this department, this is your traditional funding model for agriculture, but they also support aquaculture. So we have the CASP, which is the Comprehensive Agriculture Support Program. We have Phakisa, and then within the National Treasury, we have Jobs Fund. And then within the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, we have the ADEP, Aquaculture Development and Enhancement Program, the Agro Processing Support Program, which looks at the agro processing and beneficiation, and the Black Industrialist Program, the Critical Infrastructure Program, and Export Market and Investment Assistance. So when we look at the comprehensive agriculture support, the aim of this grant, it's a government grant, is to provide agriculture development support services. They are targeting subsistence, smallholder farmers, and black commercial farmers. This will be from a previously disadvantaged program. And these are some of your qualifying projects. And in order to apply for this, you need to consult with your provincial CASP coordinator, because even though it's the policies are done in the national department, but it's being administered by provincial departments, and also the application have been done in the provincial level. And then the second one is the Macro Agriculture Financial Institution of South Africa, which is Phakisa. So Phakisa, they provide a loan funding, and it's also for micro and small businesses. And then the qualifying projects, as mentioned there, and their maximum funding is 500,000, but a special provision can be up to 1 million for special products. So they also, because it's a loan funding, they also charge 7% interest rate per annum. So Phakisa, for aquaculture, they also have a loan for aquaculture, which is up to a maximum of 500,000. And they also require security for loans amount above 50,000. And then aquaculture, you can apply for purchase of your fingerlings, your feeds and medicine, leasing a dam or a pond, for aquaculture rights, transport costs, product cages, production cages, equipment, and so on. And then Phakisa, there are institutions which provide services on the behalf of the department, and this will be ECDC in Eastern Cape. We also have in other provinces, Mpumalanga Economic Growth Agency, and the South Africa Sugar Association, and Peulana Agriculture Financial Services, and the last one is the National Emergent Red Meat Producers Organization. So within the National Treasury, we have Jobs Fund. So Jobs Fund, the objective is to co-finance the project. In other words, they don't provide 100% grant, but it needs to be co-financed. And then this is some of the windows for Jobs Fund, because they do open their application and they close at a certain period, and they have windows for enterprise development, for infrastructure investment, support for work seekers, and lastly, institutional capacity building. So the funding minimum is 10 million. And there needs to be a match funding ratio of 1:1, which is a requirement. And the more ratio you have, the more you are being preferred. And then they also require cash contribution. It can be in terms of loans, grants, or your own cash. And then the projects which qualify for Jobs Fund, they need to be in operation for more than 2 years. So you need to also submit a complete annual financial year statements for those previous years that you've been operating. And then within the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, we have Aquaculture Development and Enhancement Program. This program is the only program that provides financing or incentive for aquaculture. So its objective is to stimulate investment by commercial viable enterprises in the aquaculture sector. And qualifying projects are primary aquaculture operations, the secondary aquaculture operations, and ancillary aquaculture operations. And then to qualify for ADAP, they use economic benefit criteria. This is where they are scoring you to see how much they can reinvest you based on what you have invested. So the grant is up to 20 million towards qualifying costs, and this qualifying cost will include your machinery, your equipment, and so on, but it excludes operational costs such as electricity and so on. So when you look at this scoring, if you have invested less than 5 million, you get 1 score, more than 5 million to 30 million, 2 scores, 30 million upwards, 3 scores. And again, they look at how many jobs are you creating per million investment. So for every million, how many jobs are you going to create? So the more you create jobs per 1 million investment, the more scores you get. And then the geographical area where your project will be based also is important. And if it's in the ADZ, you'll get 1, or in the industrial park or any agricultural park, then you'll get 1. And if it's in the area where an unemployment rate is above 30, you'll get 2. This is a measure to reduce poverty and unemployment. So if your project is in where the unemployment rate is high, then you get more scoring. And then when you look at the triple BEE, it's also important. The more you are compliant with the triple BEE, the more you get the scores. And for small businesses, if you meet all the conditions above, you also get additional 3 scores. And then for women ownership, which will be 25, and for youth, you also get scores for that. And then moving to Agro Processing Support Program, APSS. Here they're looking at the agro-processing or beneficiation projects. It can be new or existing. These are some of the things that they provide funding for. So it's a grant funding, and it offers 20 up to 30% cost sharing to a maximum of 20 million. So this will be over a 2-year investment period. And then we look at the Black Industrialist program. So this one was developed with the objective of increasing participation of Black people in the national economy. So it provides government grant funding, and they're looking at the blue ocean economy as well as co-processing. So it's also a cost sharing grant, which ranges from 30 to 50% to a maximum of 50 million. So qualifying costs include capital investment, investment support, and business development services. And then when we look at the export and investment assistant, EMEA, this one is to provide marketing assistance to develop new export markets and grow existing export markets. So here they provide incentive for those who want to open up a market in the export market, and they can be able to provide assistance in terms of identifying new export market through the research. If you want to increase your competitiveness, it can be patent registration, and then and they also have some funding products which include the individual exhibition participation. Here there will be supporting things such as transport of samples, exhibitions, and so on in the export market. And then there's also a primary market research and foreign direct investment. And the last one is individual inward missions. Yeah. And then in the private funders, we have Old Mutual, which is the Masisizane Fund, and SAB Foundation. So it's South Africa Breweries Foundation. So Masisizane Fund is a non-profit funding entity, and it provides enterprise development to SMMEs through 2 core channels, which is developing financing and business support. So the type of funding they provide is loan finance, and they also provide non-financial services. This will be provided after they provided you with capital. And then qualifying projects here will be your agro-processing, franchising, and also supply chain. And then the SAB Foundation, their objectives is also to provide small, medium, and micro-sized enterprises with funding. And then this is their element of broad-based Black economic empowerment. So their program is over 2-year business, a 2-year period where they will be providing you with business support, which will be seed funding and also assisting you with accessing the market. And then the applications, they also open and close open once a year. And then these are the qualifying projects, enterprises which are being run by the people with disability, projects which are owned by women and youth, the businesses which are in the peri-urban and rural enterprises, the projects in the identified growth areas such as Saldanha and Lephalale. Okay, and then in the provincial funders, we have various provincial DFIs that aquaculture operation can approach for funding assistance. In the Eastern Cape, we have the ECDC, the Eastern Cape Rural Development Agency.
Masuping, we've lost you. Masuping, we've lost your audio.
ECDC basically provides loan funding. I'm taking a loan. Kids.
We can hear you. Can you continue, sis?
Okay. All right. Sorry for that. Okay. So the Eastern Cape Development Corporation, ECDC, they provide finance, they coordinate markets for projects in the Eastern Cape province. And then they provide loan funding to qualifying projects, as mentioned there, agriculture, aquaculture, and fisheries, and so on. So the maximum funding is 20,000. I mean the minimum funding, sorry. And then we have the Imbaba Cooperative Fund, which is also within the ECDC. And then basically the Imbaba Fund, they only looked at primary cooperatives, and they provide loans and also the equity. And then another funding agency within the Eastern Cape is the Eastern Cape Rural Development Agency. They provide loan funding, and the qualifying projects is individual projects, and the informal groups. And then they also have different funding products, and the minimum or maximum amount will be based on the funding product that will require from them. And then their funding requirements include collateral, and you should also provide a legal and supporting documentation, and also demonstrate the character and ability to use and repay the loan. Those are some of the funding requirements they need. And then when we look at the commercial banks, the commercial banks are also providing support, financial support to aquaculture. We have First National Bank, Nedbank, Absa, and Standard Bank. So we looked at these two banks, FNB and Nedbank, and then they are both providing loan finance, and they also offers similar financial products, and this ranges from short-term production finance to long-term, where you'll be buying your land or things which will need more capital. So they give you a longer period to make repayments, and short-term loan will be for your input costs or input capital, where you'll be buying your inputs, feed, fingerlings, and so on. So as government, we have a responsibility to ensure that the information it's being provided to the stakeholders, especially as we have mentioned that aquaculture, there's still that lack of access to funding because there's less understood by the funding entities. But as government, we have approached these entities. We're able to engage them that aquaculture is a viable business like others, and they can be able to support the aquaculture sector. So in order to ensure that our stakeholders are able to know which entities they can approach in order to get finance, we've been developing a directory of development finance and grant funding organizations for aquaculture operations in South Africa. So the first volume was published in 2013, and the second one, it was published in 2017, the third one in 2019, and we'll be publishing the fourth one now before end of March. So basically this funding directory, it lists potential funders that can be accessed by aquaculture stakeholders for financial support. So it was developed in consultation with these different funding entities. So the document outlines the mandate and the objective of each funding program, the eligibility to criteria, which is the qualifying criteria, the funding structure, as well as the application procedures and contact details. And then its objective is a user-friendly funding guide. It's made for the user to be able to follow and be able to see which funding product is best suited for his or her own business. It also enables you it also create awareness and enable investment in the sector. And then we also have the Aquaculture Development Fund. It's one of the Operation Phakisa Oceans Economy Aquaculture Initiative. And then it was developed as a tool to coordinate funding, as we have mentioned that currently aquaculture faces a lack of access to finance. So its major aim is to coordinate funding from various government departments. And then we have established a working group which consists of those national departments as well as the DFIs, whereby projects, as Lisa have mentioned, are being presented and in accordance with each entity's policies and their qualifying criteria, they're able to support those who comply with their requirements, their funding requirements. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Masaping. It's a lot to absorb and to actually consider. Can you switch off your mic, please? Thank you. It's a lot to consider and a lot of information to absorb. Can we go to the floor now? I see we have some questions from the floor, starting with Morena Kashane and then Mr. Tebogo Matosa. Tebogo, Morena, take the floor, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Masupin, for the presentation. You know, I'm not attacking you. I just need some clarity on some few stuff that you have mentioned. One, you mentioned that there are some funding from the DFIs, for instance, CFA funding, but the requirement, you know, is so stiff, you know, perhaps it is not realistic. You cannot, for a fish farm, you know, mainly the primary processing, you cannot create 10 jobs for 2.5 million rands. You know, it won't work. Number two, the second question is, CASP is a beautiful fund, but the guys who are administering CASP in the provinces, they affect the aquaculture development. For instance, they will buy you a bakkie first instead of building the production system. You know, maybe the national department can assist them, you know, to implement the CASP project. The third question is, does ADEP assist with the operational? Does ADEP assist with the operational inputs, meaning feed and fingerlings? The fourth question and the last one is the most difficult one. How much has been raised from the ADF? Thank you.
Thank you, Morena. Colleagues, I think to be fair, can we not bombard with 4 questions at once? At least let's have a minimum of 2. And then when we end, after the presentations, we'll allow more time for general questions, just to allow people to be aware of what's being asked. I've noted, Debucho, you also have your step, but Masubing, over to you, and colleagues, feel free to assist and jump in.
Okay, thank you, Morena. In terms of the blended finance program, is their mandate, as you may be aware, that programs are developed based on their mandate. For example, NEF will be for Black empowerment. So if their mandate is to increase jobs and they want a project to create 10 jobs for them to assist that particular project, then that's their requirement. It means you'll have to look somewhere where they will where you'll be eligible to qualify, because it is a requirement. They do say that if you are an SMME and you are creating less than 10 jobs, then you will not be considered for the program. And then your second, I don't know whether it was a comment or question, it was based on CASP. I don't know, we do have aquaculture people who sit for CASP, and they are also assisting in terms of technically going through the applications for CASP. So I don't know if something is being bought before another one, how is the advice being given? I think my colleagues will be able to assist in terms of CASP, or anyone from CASP who can assist. And then in terms of ADEP, ADEP does exclude some of the operational costs, as mentioned, like electricity, salaries, and so on. But in terms of feed, they do provide assistance in terms of feed. There's a certain percentage, I think it's 10% of your investment that they reinvest you with for purchasing of feed. And then they also provide assistance in terms of rental costs, and this one will be only for Black small businesses. And then your fourth question was regarding ADF. So when ADF was being, the concept of ADF came 2014, Operation Phakisa Lab. The aim was to coordinate finance from different government departments and so on. But we did a feasibility study where we were looking at whether this fund will be viable or not, will be feasible or not. So the report indicated that there is a financial assistance available, like all these funding entities and funding products that I just presented now. They are willing to assist aquaculture, given that you are eligible for their requirements or you comply with their requirements. And therefore, it won't be feasible to do an actual fund. An actual fund, it's where you have a fund that provides funding to projects. But instead, we have developed a working group, as mentioned, and within this working group, different funding entities that are able to assist those who are who meet the criteria of their funding requirements. I think that's all I can say. I don't know if there's any assistance from my colleagues.
I think that is fine, Masupin. Teboho?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask regarding the different funding opportunities, right? Because what I hear mostly is SMMEs. So, but then I want to know, are you going to be able to provide us with those that are specifically for startups? And the second question is that sometimes you get these funding opportunities and you go through the form, but then you don't necessarily like fill it in correctly. Does the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, will it be able to assist us startups to come in some way, some into the departments and assist us in filling in the forms? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Teboho. Okay, thank you, Teboho. The DEF don't have a funding or a grant to provide to projects, but all the entities that I have mentioned, you are able to go to their offices, or you can consult them. The directories that I've also shown you, they have contact details of who you can contact, and they also show the application process or procedure. So us was to give information because we have consulted these people before. There was a challenge that when you knock at a funding institution and you say you want to do aquaculture, they will say they don't know what is that. But now it's been we have intervened and went to these institutions and consulted them about their products and what they can offer in the sector, and also create an awareness of what is this the aquaculture and that it's a viable business. So most of the time when you go to these institutions, they are aware of aquaculture than before when they were not aware. So as DEF, we do not have a grant, but the grants are there at the DTI. The small business now they have moved their grants to CIFA, where they do that blended finance, where they are blending their grants with the loan from CIFA. We have also the grants from agriculture and the National Treasury, as mentioned. So those are the government institutions that you can approach. You can go to your Department of Agriculture locally to inquire about CASP, and also Phakisa, although they are not administering Phakisa, it's with the institutions that I have mentioned, like ECDC in the Eastern Cape and so on. Thank you.
Thanks, Masuping. Primrose, if you could get ready and pull up your presentation. Are there any more questions from the floor? Any final questions? All right, then. Primrose, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Am I audible?
Yes, but we can't see a presentation yet.
Okay, let me try and share it. Otherwise, MTS, can you help me pull it up, please?
No, share it so that you can drive yourself.
Sorry, it's somewhere on my.
Have you opened the presentation? Have you opened the presentation yet? Because I don't see it. Click stop presenting.
Can you see it? No?
No. All we see is your desktop screen. Have you opened your presentation?
I have.
Imtiaz, can you rescue, please assist?
Yeah. Can you see it?
Okay, I can do a screen share from my IT
Can you do a screen share? Because Primrose doesn't, I don't think she knows how. Please. Imtiaz is assisting, apologies. And while we are waiting, are there any other questions, general questions that one would like to ask thus far?
Okay, can you see Primrose?
Morena, you have a question, you can ask it.
Yes, it must.
Okay.
I just need a quick clarity. Is the ADF a funding, or is the ADF a platform where you invite group of funders? Is the ADF a funding, a PES, or ADF is a platform where you invited group of funders? Thank you.
Okay, Masuping, if you could assist there.
No, ADF is not a PES, but it's a platform. Thank you.
Okay. Imti, are you winning? I don't see a slide full view.
Okay. Primrose, can you see?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay.
Thank you, Imtiaz, for assisting. Just every time I finish with one slide, I'll just say thank you, and then you can move to the next slide. Can you hear me, Imtiaz?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Primrose Bontlelhubie. I am from the Aquatic Animal Health Unit, and I will be presenting on animal health and also animal health related functions within our subunit. Thank you. Imti, can we go to the next one?
It's not moving. I don't know why. It just froze.
Just froze.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can share. Oh, I don't know. It doesn't want to share.
I can see your screen. You just need to make it full screen now.
I did full screen, but I can't see anything on my side.
Oh, okay, let me. It's working now.
No.
Let me try again. Okay, that's working. Yeah. Can you see, Primrose?
Yes, I can see. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so these are my table of contents. I'll speak about introduction in animal health, the diseases in aquaculture, the major routes of diseases also in aquaculture, how we can control, regulate, and manage aquaculture through the implementation of biosecurity practices. And then I'll just take a brief moment and then also structure the presentation to those farmers who are in the future who will be interested in exporting. So I'll talk about the health management procedures for South African shellfish produce for export. So this is the document that regulates aquatic animal health when it comes to export. You know, it talks about the requirements, what is needed, so that farmers can be able to export. I will talk about the veterinary procedural notice, the requirements, and also some responsibilities of our unit as the aquatic animal health, and also conclusion or some final remarks on the presentation. Thank you. Okay, so animal health is very important in farming because if you don't have animals, you cannot farm. So it is imperative that farmers really take care of their animals and ensure that, you know, all the practices are being implemented. The welfare and the animal health is key factor. Like that's the one thing that needs to be there when you ensure that you are going to have sustainable farming. So it is the number one key factor and it needs to be taken care of. Like you need to ensure that you implement these changes because if you don't, you will end up with a very expensive exercise of ensuring that your animals are healthy. Thank you, MTS. Okay, so diseases in aquaculture. Just like in any other farming, whether you are in terrestrial or whether you are in aquaculture, you know, there will always be diseases. Diseases are inevitable. So we need to ensure that biosecurity practices are being implemented. Some pathogens are always there. You know, you will always have fungi, you will always have virus, you'll always have parasites just roaming around. Like, for example, if you look at the tried model there on your bottom, you have your host, your environment, and your agent. So you need to ensure that your host is always healthy and then is not immunocompromised. For example, if the feed that you're feeding your animals are not boosting the immune system of your animal, or if you overstocking your
I can't hear you, Primrose.
animals to sorry about that, whereby you exposing your animals to diseases. So you need to ensure that also your water quality is taken care of. You clean your water as you know, as often as possible, because if you don't, there are these opportunistic pathogens that are always roaming around, and if they find that your animals or your host that are immunocompromised, that is when they can come in. So you need to ensure that you protect your animals. Like I said, these bacteria and fungi are everywhere, but if they find that your host, you know, the immune system is robust, the immune system is healthy, then they cannot easily just enter, and you ensuring that your animals are healthy. So it's really imperative that, you know, you keep the balance between your host, your environment, and the agent. Thank you, MTS. So there are major routes for disease transmission through the fish movement, whether they are coming into your establishment or they are leaving your establishment. So people that are always coming into your farm, we do not know where they have been in the last hour or 30 minutes. So they also act as, a route for transmitting diseases. And also you have your feed. How you store your feed is very important. It plays a major role as well. And then your equipments and the vehicles that are coming into your facility, the health status of the fish, and also aquatic and non-aquatic animals, and your water source. So I'll expand more on my previous slides, because as I said in the bottom, so through generic biosecurity measures, that is when you can prevent all these disease transmission. So the take-home message is prevention, prevention, prevention in farming. Thank you, Imtiaz. So disease management in aquaculture, as I've mentioned, is through biosecurity, which is it's a simple step. Some people may see it as simple, but it's a very effective step of ensuring that, you minimize the risk of diseases or infections coming into your farm. So it's very, very important. And like I said, it can save you a lot of money. All you have to do is implement these biosecurity measures, whereby you ensure that people that are coming in, they always sanitize their hands. They always, disinfect the equipment that they use. They always wear boots and also disinfect those boots. It's a simple step, but it's very effective in ensuring that you have a sustainable aquaculture or you have sustainable farm. Thank you so much, Imtiaz. So now I will speak about biosecurity practices and how to prevent all these major disease transmissions that I have spoken about in my previous slides. Thank you, Imtiaz. The first one, as you remember, I spoke about the fish movement. So now, whenever you get animals into your establishment, you need to ensure that, you get these animals from a known zone or from a known place. And also you need to ensure that these animals, where you get them from a reputable source, and also before they come in, you need to ensure that they are accompanied by a health certificate or a health report, indicating that these animals have been checked by an animal health technician or a veterinarian. So at least that gives you confidence that the animals that you are going to put into your establishment have been inspected, and then therefore they are healthy. And then also ensure that before you mix them with your existing resident stock, make sure that you quarantine, because we do not know through the movement what might have transpired during transportation. So ensure that you separate them before you mix them with your existing stock, so that you do not compromise the health of the animals that you already have in your establishment. Thank you, MT. So as I've mentioned, the people that are coming in as well, they also play a major role, in disease transmission, because like I said, we don't know for the past 30 minutes or an hour where they have been. They might have been in contact with contaminated fish. We do not know. So the best thing that you can do is ensure that you provide them with protective clothing, such as your boots and your overalls, and ensure that they sanitize their hands before coming into contact with your animals as well, and ensure that also they provide you with their name, so that if something can occur, you have traceability and who might have been into contact with those animals. Thank you, Imti. So the feed, how you store your feed, as I've mentioned, plays a major role. So these commercially processed diets, normally they don't pose such a huge risk, but how you store them, if you store them improperly, then you're exposing them to contamination. So you always need to ensure that you store them in the correct manner. And then always make sure that your rodents or your rats or your mouse are kept very far away from where you store your feed, because these rodents, they carry diseases. So you need to also invest in pest control. Ensure that there's always those pest control before each and every entrance where you keep your feed storage. And then also your live animals, or your fresh or frozen, also them as well, they pose a major risk. For example, if you feed your animals another fish, you don't know what that fish might have, and then you are feeding it to your resident fish. So that also poses a major disease transmission as well. Thank you, MT. So the equipments and the vehicles and vessels. So the equipments that you use, I would advise that you use separate equipments for separate tanks or separate ponds. Maybe you can color code them to ensure that they're only used for that pond, because as something like a disease breakout might happen in one pond, and then you are just using one equipment, so you're busy transferring diseases from one pond to another. So it's important that you separate them, and also it's important that you disinfect them before each and every use, to prevent the spread of pathogens. And the vehicles that are coming in as well, ensure that you spray them. As I said, we don't know where they're coming from, so the only protection that you can get, and protection that you can get for your animals, is to ensure that you disinfect the people, the equipment, and the vehicles that are coming into your farm. Thank you, MT. So the aquatic and the non-aquatic animals also play a role as well. Your stray dogs or your rodents, you don't know where they also might have been, and you don't know what they carry. So ensure that your farm is well fenced off, so that these non-aquatic animals can enter. For example, with abalone farming, we always encourage them to have nets on top of their baskets, to prevent these seagulls from always floating around, because we don't know what they have. They can go from one tank to the other, exposing diseases from that tank to another tank as well. So it's one of the biosecurity requirements to ensure that we minimize, this disease transmission. So always make sure that your farm is well fenced off to minimize all this disease transmission. Thank you, MT. Okay, and your water source and your fish health as well. So like I said in my earlier slides, I said if your one animal is immunocompromised, it is very easy that it's going to compromise your other animal as well. So you need to ensure that you keep your animals as healthy, and you keep them away from pathogens, because transmission can occur through direct contact as well, by one fish to the other, and then that's when you have now a disease breakout, and then you experience mortalities in your farm. Thank you, MT. So before I move on into this slide, I just want to drive it home that the take home message when it comes to animal health is ensuring that you implement biosecurity practices, which means you prevent at all times. So it's a simple step, as I've said, but it can save you a lot of money, And also it's a relatable subject. I mean, with everything that is happening in the world with regards to COVID, we are actually, it's a relatable subject, because if you're exposed, they always say you need to quarantine or isolate yourself so that you don't expose, the disease from one person to another. It is the same concept. If you implement it, then you're ensuring that, you are safe and your loved ones are also safe, and it can also save you a lot of money. So if you implement this as well in your farming, when you get to animals, you quarantine them, you ensure that, your existing animals are still safe, and then also you don't spend a lot of money trying to, recover animals or through the loss of mortalities. So like I said, prevention, and I think it's everything. It's everything that everybody can do, especially when it comes to COVID. It's a relatable subject. Prevention. So that's the basic of animal health, and the basic of, the importance of biosecurity when you want to ensure that your farm is safe from disease transmission. Those basic steps, they can save you a lot. So Imtiaz, I'll move to the export related measures. So those ones are just for farmers who in the future will be interested in exporting. So once you got like your basic, animal health and biosecurity in check, and then now you want to start exporting. So these are the things that will be required from you when it comes to aquatic animal health after you've applied. I'm sure Imtiaz mentioned in his presentation, you'd have to apply, and then they will give you a permit, and then those things, they will be highlighted what needs to be um, uh, uh, um, implemented when it comes to aquatic animal health. Who can be eligible to export? What measures are you going to put so that to ensure that you can export? So we have 3 institutions at the moment who are involved when it comes to exporting. So we have our department, which is the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, and then we have the NRCS, and then we also rope in the provincial veterinary services when it's needed, when necessary. Thank you, MT. So the NRCS will issue a hygiene certificate in terms of the NRCS mandate. So this is to facilitate the process. In 2014, our department and the NRCS entered into a memorandum of understanding, primarily to ensure that we facilitate trade to the to China, which is our main country of import. So that is why we entered into this memorandum. So in 2016, we sat down as the department, and the NRCS as well, and we also invited the members of industry and also the veterinary services in order for us to develop an official surveillance animal health program that will allow us to export to China. So because South Africa is a member state of the OIE, World Health Organization, we had to ensure that we incorporate the OIE's requirements, and also we incorporate the Chinese requirements, because remember, I said China is our main country of import. So we needed to take into considerations what their requirements are so that we can be eligible to export into their country. So this document, incorporated all these requirements, and now we are able to export to China. So thank you, MTS. So this document, it has elements in it of the health management procedures. So the Chinese requirements, they say that your animals, when they come into our country, you need to ensure that they are from an official surveillance program. So they gave us their requirements. They said it has to have a passive component and it has to be an active component. So those are the Chinese requirements. I will get into them in my other slides. But the veterinary procedural notice, this is basically basic biosecurity requirements, which is something that the World Health Organization preaches each and every day, because like I said, it's your basic step into ensuring that you have a healthy stock. So basically this veterinary procedural notice is just to ensure that you are practicing basic biosecurity measures onto your farm. So like I said, we took the Chinese requirements and also the OIE's requirements, which is our veterinary procedural notice. Thank you, Imtiaz. So now with the approved official surveillance, as I said, which are the Chinese requirements, you have your passive component and you have your active component. So your passive component is basically your reporting. You need to ensure that each and every person that comes into contact with your animals, they have training once a year, or they are able to identify when there has diseases, or when there is a disease outbreak on the farm. And also it encourages participants to report to the department. So if you see that there's anything into your farm, you have to report to us, and we as the department, we have the responsibility to notice our partner, which is the NRCS, that there has something happened, and then also to the OIE. So now so if there's any outbreak of diseases, remember now I'm talking about exporting diseases. So the exporting diseases, now when it comes to abalone, the Chinese have mentioned that you need to ensure that these animals are abalone herpes virus, the Phakisa alsoni, and Xenoheliotis canifoliensis. So fortunately for us, since the inception of aquaculture, we haven't had any disease reporting when it comes to invertebrates, when it comes to abalone. So we are still on the safe side. So it's very fortunate for us. And then also the other part that the Chinese required is the active component. So now this is when we as the aquatic animal health unit or the veterinary services from provinces and also your attending vet ensures that we are actively on the farm and we look after the animals to ensure that your animals are safe from diseases and that they are healthy. And then also you need to submit samples to ensure that, as I've said, these 3 OIE listed diseases that the Chinese people are concerned about, that we don't have it in South Africa, we are free of these diseases. So once you have done so, and then you can be eligible now to export to China. Thank you, Imtiaz. So with the oysters as well, we did the same approach that the Chinese wanted as well. So it's basically the same approach. The one speaks about disease information, disease reporting, and the active components as well. And it also has the VPN. It's basically the same from abalone and then the oysters, the same requirements. Thank you, Imti. So the veterinary procedural notice, as I've said, we had to sit down because South Africa is obligated to the OIE. We are a member state of the OIE, so we need to follow their practices and their requirements as well. So we had to incorporate this into the documents. So we do have a veterinary procedural notice. As I've said, OIE always stresses a lot and preaches a lot about the importance of biosecurity. So this is when our vet, or the attending private vet goes, to inspect the farm to ensure that they are practicing biosecurity practices. Once they do so, and then they can be given an approval to export, which is only valid for 1 year. After 1 year has elapsed, and then we have to retest again, ensure that you don't have these diseases, those 3 OIE listed diseases that they are interested in. And also the vet has to go back again and ensure that they inspect the biosecurity practices. So once all these are in place, the biosecurity practices are in place, and also you have tested, there's proof, that you have tested with your health examinations, and then we send these results, because as I've said in my previous slides, there's a memorandum of understanding that was entered by the department. We need to provide the health assurances to the NRCS saying that, okay, this farm is eligible now to export. They have fully complied with the Chinese requirements, and they have fully complied with the OIE's requirements. So now they can be eligible to export. So this is what the existing farms have been, obligated to do for them to export, and they have been successfully doing so since the implementation of the document, which has assisted a lot. Thank you, Imtiaz. So with the veterinary procedure is also the same as I've mentioned with the abalones. There's also the same requirements for the oysters as well, for the oyster industry that are exporting to China. Thank you, MT. So we have responsibilities as the aquatic animal health subunit. We strive, to promote and improve aquatic animal health and good farming practices. We want to safeguard the aquatic animal health industry and ensure that, animals are free from any aquatic diseases. We want to say, like I said, we are member state today to the OIE. So we want to ensure that we can provide the health assurances to the local and international markets, which we are currently doing now when it comes to China. We can be able to say, yes, these are the health guarantees. And then now our farms, we are opening up trade. And then we also want to raise awareness on aquatic animal health. And we also want to, ensure that we adhere to the standards of the OIE as we are a member state. And also we want to promote the welfare and the animal health as an overall, in South Africa. Thank you, MT. So my conclusion or the final remarks on the presentation, as the unit, or not as the unit, as the department, the ultimate goal, we want to ensure that we grow the sector, and also, we facilitate trade. That is what we strive to do each and every day. This is through us providing advisory services to the farmers to ensure that everybody's still on track, everybody still needs to know what to do, so that at the end of the day, we can be able to grow, because I think everybody wants to see the sector growing. So we want to provide that, that helping hand to ensure that we grow it from one level to another through the assistance of the industry. And then also through the implementation of the health management procedures, we are confident that, this goal will be realized, because we developed the document together with the members of the industry. So we are working hand in hand to ensure that this goal is eventually realized, because once we grow the sector, there's opportunities, there's job opportunities, we can alleviate poverty as a whole, and then we can ultimately, improve the GDP of the country. So now we are working towards making a declaration, of freedom to the OIE listed diseases of South Africa. So now the OIE has requirements in terms of us to declare that we are free from the OIE listed diseases. These ones that, the Chinese is also concerned about, So they have their own standards and we are striving towards that. Hence we always say, let's practice basic biosecurity practices. Let's always ensure that we test for these animal health diseases to ensure that we do not have them. So once we do this, because they gave us for a period of 10 years, once we are able to provide evidence that we've checked continuously the biosecurity measures, we've checked continuously, tested all the time for these OIE listed diseases, then we can prove to them that whenever we have to export, then we are free from these OIE listed diseases. But it's still early stages. I mean, we just implemented the document in 2016. So we still have a long way to go, but at the moment we are showing, that we are working towards that. We are working towards improving, and facilitating markets. And by doing so, we want to open up to other markets. Like I said, for now, we only have one importing country, which is China, that we concentrate on. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we want to open other, markets as well. For example, the EU market, we want to break into that. So we need to show the OIE and the whoever market that we want to break into that, here's the evidence, we are working towards that. And finally, we just want to thank, the industry for working with us and ensuring that, we grow towards, we continuously grow the sector and we want to thrive. So we want to thank them because we worked hand in hand, as I said, and by us continuing to work hand in hand, we know that we will get there. We know that we will grow the sector. We know that we offer support when it comes to basic, even if you don't want to export, but you just want a sustainable farming, we offer that as well. We do stock inspections on the farm to ensure that, we minimize the disease risk so that you can survive, on those stock that you already have. And then we save you a lot of money when it comes to treatment. You don't have to go there, So we thanking the industry, and we hopefully we will work, together in more coming years, and then the sector can grow also in South Africa. Thank you. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, it was a short presentation. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Primrose. Can we go to the floor for questions? Primrose, please switch off your mic. There is an echo.
Oh.
Thanks. Any questions from the floor? Questions for Primrose on aquatic animal health from the floor? All right. All right, maybe while we are waiting, any other question? Thanks, Primrose. I think there are no questions from the floor. I'd like to extend a big vote of thanks to the Eastern Cape Maritime Business Chamber for actually inviting us to actually participate in this initiative. We think this is just the beginning. There were lots of teething problems, but we have learned a lot from the mistakes and the challenges we've had today, and we'll definitely improve upon it. I'd like to also thank my colleagues greatly for having taken such a great, being so interested in wanting to participate in this and empower our sector further. Thank you, colleagues. I see that Mr. Unati Sonti has his hand up. Unati, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Smme, and good afternoon to everyone. No, my hand was just up, just to wait until you were finished, and then I could maybe come in at the end. But be that maybe you have given me, the opportunity just to. One is to thank the department, for availing themselves and for this informative session like this. And also, our thanks goes to you, Smme, for steering this ship. We know we once engaged about this, and then you were prompt in terms of responding and making sure that we have what we have today, and your colleagues also were very much willing. So we a big up to you. If we were in one room, we would definitely give you a big round of applause, including your team. And we believe that maybe we can even take this to our next, the next level would be, one, we've got what is called the Maritime 101 sessions, and I think we would wish to include, this type of a workshop into that program as well. And then we also look into how can we take it now to the next level in terms of that practical program you have, at Harib Dam, where maybe in the next coming, which is in April, we also have, some SMMEs going for that, a practical training. But I'm sure you've got ways of a systematic way of how do we move now from the SMME awareness program to the next level. And also not forgetting what we engaged about regarding, remember last week we talked of when people were asking about funding and all these other departments, and you did mention to say you've got bilaterals with some of these departments. So it would make it easier if where you've already got relations with certain departments that we require, for us to progress in terms of aquaculture related activities. Maybe you take lead in terms of linking us with those and bringing them under one table, so that we have a progressive engagement of how do we now move ahead with this program. So in those short words, it is to say thank you very much for everything, and thank you to everyone that has participated since last week, and those that are joining us this week. We thank them as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Budunati. I think that this is just the beginning, as we said in the first session. This is just an inroad. On the issue of facilitating of funding, there are actually issues that were highlighted initially and categorized as higher level. That is something that you'd have to engage with the department and our senior managers on. Regarding the facilitation of funding, and as well as the other issues that you had listed as issues of importance. We decided to just have a little bit of small wins and start with awareness and create the awareness. On the issue of actual training, the ball is I won't say it's in your court, but Ponzo has shared information, Ponzo Sibanda, on the training days and the Ponzo has shared information on the training at Harib, and I advise you to actually contact her. You've made inroads already, and now we just need to escalate our communications on the matter and communications on the other higher level matters. This is just the beginning of getting to know each other and getting to know who does what. I would advise you also to look at the presentations and the information and the booklets that we're going to provide. Do call us and contact us if you have any queries. We are very open to discussions. We're very open to one-on-one communication. Do not hesitate to just contact. Everybody has cell phones and email numbers. And emails. Do just drop us an email or just call us, and we'll see where we can assist and where we can facilitate. Thank you. Colleagues, and this is not my effort, it is a big collective effort. I did not do any presentation here. My colleagues did most of the work. So I would like to, if I could, also do a big round of applause for my colleagues. Well done, everybody, and thank you very much to the Eastern Cape Maritime Business Chamber for actually giving us this opportunity. Colleagues, it's been a very long session. Thank you very much and have a very good day. Thanks. I declare the session closed.
Thank you, Zimasa. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Zimasa. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zim. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.